Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the May regular public board meeting. I want to welcome everyone and start us off in a good way by recognizing and acknowledging both the Esquimalt and the Songhees nations on whose traditional territories we live, we learn, and we do our work. Trustees, may I have a mover to approve this evening's agenda? Thank you, Trustee David. And a seconder? Thank you, Trustee Kwan. Any changes or amendments? I know there is one. Okay, so there is one I wanted to add at C1B, a motion for the board's consideration. And perhaps what I'll do first is just get the wording of the motion to staff. So I'm just going to send the wording to staff. So it's just coming to, I'll send it over to the secretary treasurer and the superintendent. So you've got that for the minutes, and then I'll read it into the record for everybody. So it is as follows. Sorry, just bear with me. Okay. Sorry. Computer is just being a little slow tonight. Just bear with me a sec. Okay, so that the Board of Education of SD 61 Greater Victoria direct the board chair to write to the Victoria Police Board to make a formal request for the following information. Any and all data pertaining to gang recruitment or other criminal activity involving youth between 2015 to date. Any and all data pertaining to police callouts to each SD 61 school broken down by each school within the Victoria Police Department's jurisdiction between 2015 to date. And a copy of any and all Victoria Police policies and procedures related to vulnerable populations, including youth. And so that would be added under C1B of the agenda. All right, I'm happy to move that. And do I have a seconder? Thank you, Trustee Mabobi. Any discussion in relation to the amendment to the agenda? So again, it's just adding a motion for the board's consideration under C1B. Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of the amendment to the agenda with a show of hands, trustees? And that is unanimous. Okay, so we have an agenda as amended. Are there any other amendments to the agenda? All right, seeing none, all those in favor of the amended agenda? And that is unanimous. Thank you very much, trustees. Okay, so we are now at our minutes. And so I'll just again be looking to trustees for a mover to approve the minutes. And again, these are the minutes of our regular meeting last month. Thank you, Trustee Mabobi, and a seconder to approve those minutes. Thank you, Trustee Bio. Any discussion in relation to the minutes or any changes or amendments to those minutes? All right, seeing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes from our last board meeting? And that is unanimous. All right, thank you again, trustees. All right, do we have any business arising from the minutes? Okay, seeing none, we do have a number of community presentations this evening. Welcome to our presenters that are here with us. The first community presentation is from Annie Shum. Annie is going to be speaking about music classrooms. Annie, I don't know if you've been to the board before to present, but essentially how it works is you have 5 minutes as a presenter. I am going to time you, and my apologies in advance. I will let you know when you have 1 minute left. Unfortunately, that does require me to interrupt you. So please excuse the interruption, just to let you know that you've got that minute left. So whenever you are ready, I will, I'll turn the floor over to you and I'll start the timer and let you know when you've got 1 minute left.
Okay, thank you. And I'm sorry if there's extraneous noise because I'm in the middle of teaching ukulele, so it's very a good timing here. Thank you for giving me the time to talk about the lack of space for our elementary music programs. My name is Annie Sham. I'm the music teacher at Marigold Elementary, and I've been teaching elementary music in the district for the past 12 years. In 2019, the student population at George J, where I was teaching, grew so much that the school lost their music room, and I packed up all the expensive instruments, many of which I had fundraised for, into a tiny airless closet under the stairs. And the solution proposed to me was to use a cart that could hold a class set of ukuleles and a few xylophones to teach in the classrooms. Even with the full support of the staff and a cart, the music program was greatly compromised. Playing instruments is a key component of a rich music program. For most students, learning an instrument is a highly motivating and rewarding experience. However, different instruments are needed for different grades because of different motor skills, cognitive development, and so on. Although the cart was huge, it couldn't possibly hold all the instruments needed for a quality music program. Running to and from 8 different classes a day was exhausting, but worse was witnessing the negative impact it had on the students. Music is normally a joyful time in their day, a time of collaborative fun, and that strengthens relationships and gives much needed validation to those students who are struggling with other subjects. Learning a new instrument and performing it in front of their friends and families is a huge boost to any child's self-esteem. But losing their music classroom and watching their music teacher struggle with that heavy cart every day, the students learned that the thing that they love and connect with isn't valued. To my great dismay, I've heard that a number of elementary music teachers are facing this problem still. Vic West is losing its music room, and they are now considering axing the music program because they have to teach in a classroom. The classroom teachers, naturally, it's very hard for them to do prep during that time. The music teacher therefore is leaving the school. Doncaster is moving its program into the multi-purpose room where there's little storage and room to move. The music teacher there must share with the before and after school care groups. At Northridge, students learn in a tiny space with no windows, no ventilation, no technology, and no storage. Eagleview students learn either in their classrooms or in the library. These learning conditions are deplorable. Every year, music teachers are told that they may lose their rooms. It is extremely stressful and demoralizing. Many families are moving into this beautiful community. To welcome and integrate them into our community, we need activities like music that bring us all together. These activities require spaces. Music is the beating heart of the school. Please protect music rooms and give the music programs that students love the space to grow. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And you had time to spare. Thanks very much, Annie. We really appreciate you taking the time to raise your concerns with us tonight. You're not obliged, but I always offer presenters an opportunity to take questions if they wish, but again, you're not obliged to.
Sure.
Okay. All right, folks. Trustees, do we have any questions for Annie in relation to her presentation? Trustee Kwan, go ahead.
Not really any questions, Annie. You know how I feel about music, and just wanted to say thank you for everything that you do. And I think this is definitely something that I appreciate you highlighting. I think it's something that trustees should be looking at closely and seeing how we can mitigate some of these issues. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Kwan. Any other questions or indeed comments for Annie? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Thank you very much, Annie. Again, we really appreciate you taking the time to share your concerns. And I just want to clarify, did you have any slides or any submission that you wanted to provide the board? Okay. Okay. No. Thank you very much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Take care. Have a good evening. Good night. Okay, folks. We also have another community presentation under A7B. I'd like to welcome Lisa Gunderson, who will be speaking about community advocating for students and safety with an acronym CAS, I believe, and data regarding Black youth and SPLOs. Hi, Lisa. Welcome. Nice to see you.
Cool.
Again, we have 5 minutes, and I will time you. And again, I apologize in advance for if I do indeed have to interrupt you a minute before, but I will just let you know when you've got a minute left. And whenever you're ready, the floor is yours.
Oh, before we get started, I was wondering, I have to be able to share my screen.
Yes. So you do have some
Am
slides.
I frozen?
Do we have your slides so that perhaps our staff can put those up? I'm just turning to staff to
They
get some direction on how we can manage the slides tonight.
Kelly had
thank-
said to me I could share my screen, that way I can go through the slides, or if that's a problem, I could
Just bear with us. Let's find out technically what is possible. Yeah, Associate Superintendent Arts, go ahead.
Yes, hi, we're just making Dr. Gunderson a co-host here so she can share her screen.
Perfect. Thank you very much. If you wouldn't mind just bearing with us while we do that, and then you'll be good to go.
no problem. And could I just say I'm going to be using the term you as a collective because you all are unanimous, and I don't want to single out any one individual at all. We've had enough of that. So
Thanks for the clarification.
oh, it looks like I can share now.
Perfect. Whenever you're ready,
Let's
the
see.
floor is yours.
Let me just make sure you all can see. And for clarification, I won't be going through every slide that I sent to you all in the pack up due to the time. Is that okay? Oh, okay. So just let me know.
Whenever you're ready, you just feel free to
Oh,
present in
okay.
whatever way you wish.
Sorry. Hi, everyone. Good evening. I am Dr. Lisa Gunderson. I'm known as Dr. Lisa or Dr. G. I'm a parent of a current SD61 student and a member of CAS. And most importantly, I sat on the SD61 School Police Liaison Committee for 3 years for VCPAC. I am not representing VCPAC this evening. As a clinical psychologist and an RCC consultant who specializes in equity and anti-racism in schools, I believe in positive wellness. I think it's safe to say you don't have to explain systemic racism and discrimination, trauma, racialized violence, and how it impacts our spirits, minds, and bodies. It is important to understand that we have worked with our community in Victoria who have had racialized violence perpetuated on them by police. I have an intergenerational trauma around policing, law enforcement, where we can name thousands of those in between each of these famous persons. Each one of these is representative of a person. My parents were Marquette Fry, I was Rodney King, my older son Trayvon Martin, and my youngest George Floyd. Our relationship with police. After all of this, if we can work with police, surely you can. We had someone call one of our leaders in our community to blame us for ending the SPLO program. Comments such as trustees had to consider trauma and harm that police presence can mean for some students, including those who are Black and Indigenous, highlighted us. Like this slide, you are able to read everything here, even though it's a mess. That's how the narrative has been perpetuated, that we were the cause of the program ending and we all hate police and we want nothing to do with them. I requested directly that you all try your utmost to explain properly to the media why you made the decision you did and not blame IBOC students, especially when our data and the majority of our presentations do not support the narrative. We even went back and collected more data. There is no whitewashing here. In fact, we specifically asked for IBOC folk to be identified for those purposes. By not quoting our data and instead quoting data from other places, you put us in a position to receive more racialized violence and perpetuated racialized harm. Unintentionally or intentionally, your lack of not telling the whole story has had a negative impact on communities and students. Look at what this means. The data is clear. The interactions with SPLOs are more positive, and even the negative responses decrease, which is what we want. Data is trending in the right direction. You will in fact notice it was the white students that had more difficulty. Clearly, there's a need for CG and neurodiversity education, and we have a great opportunity here to make both of our systems better and more responsive. Please help to make us do that. I would be happy to speak more to this in the question and answer if you would like. When educational institutions reinforce us being afraid of them, we hesitate to reach out when we need them. I'm sorry, but if someone breaks into my home, calling the school board or my principal isn't going to help. In fact, you would all tell me to call 911. I learned about a SD61 student who was robbed 2 weekends ago, and he told the teacher he wasn't going to speak to the police because what difference would it make? We have no doubt if he had an SPLO in the school, not only would he have been safer to go and talk to them because he's not physically walking into a PD, but he would feel more comfortable because it's someone he knows and the people he trusts knows in the school. That is relationship, and right now he does not have that option. I also wanted to mention that there are 4 pages of recommendations for ending the program, and those have not been followed yet. Who are you the citizens of Vancouver, Toronto, Seattle, or Victoria? Your job is to help keep students, including my child, safe. And that if you hire counselors who understand racialized policing, violence, and trauma to work with students who need that, and allow us to continue to create true relationships with SPLOs, which will allow us to get more in line with the narrative that many of us have in our communities. We are trying to work with the police, that we want future members of our communities in the force, and that we want to not lose this opportunity to demand more from our policing partners, and that another child who is robbed on a weekend might be a little less hesitant to go to the people they will need for help, the police. Let us not forget these are our neighbors, our friends, they are parents with children in the school, and I refuse to believe we can't find a way forward. So perhaps there is another alternative, one narrative that would explain all of this. And that is that the years that I and many others in our communities have been and continue to work on in building relationships with police through the DAC, through countless discussions occurring that you aren't aware of, maybe that's the narrative, that we are seeing the fruits of our labor paying off. I ask, oh, was that time?
It was, yeah, it goes by quickly, I know.
I will stop there and thank you all. I want to thank Lori Poppy and Anna Warhurst for help as well. I was going to ask for a particular motion. If somebody asks me what that is, I will answer that. If not, I will honor your time.
Yeah, and if I know that your slides are in the packet for trustees, so we and I know we've reviewed them as well. So but again, I want to, you're not obliged to answer questions, but would you mind just stop sharing for a second? It'll just be easier for us to then see everybody. And then I will provide an opportunity if you wish. And again, you're not obliged to, but if you do wish to take questions from trustees, then I will indeed open the floor for that. Did you want to, sorry, Lisa, I didn't catch. Did you want to take questions from trustees? And again, you're not obliged to.
Oh yeah, I would be happy to. And if one of the trustees would like to ask me about the specific motion, I'd be happy to answer that.
Okay, trustees, do you have any questions for Lisa? Trustee Painter, go ahead.
Chair, it's not a question, it's an observation. Is that an acceptable variation?
Yeah, no, please do. Yeah, that's fine. If you have a comment that you want to pass along, go ahead.
Well, in reviewing the agenda package for this one, I was reminded of a statement made back in April by the Support Network for Indigenous Women and Women of Color regarding the SPLO program. And it's too long to go into at length, but one part was, police do not solve issues of violence in schools. They alienate vulnerable youth. Gangs thrive in environments where youth do not feel welcome and supported. Sports, after-school programs, music programs, and providing resources for students and families are more effective ways to make youth feel supported and address violence. Cops are not equipped to work with youth in schools like teachers, counselors, and other school staff are. Police presence in schools has never been proven to address gang activity. Police presence should continue to be limited to when a crime is committed. And I don't offer that in any kind of way as a refutation of what we've just heard from Dr. Gunderson, more to identify that this entire topic is very complex, very nuanced, and that within every community and sub-community that we have engaged with, we have a wide range of perspectives. So just trying to identify that this is a very complex and challenging one. And I am appreciative of the efforts of the chair and my fellow trustees in reaching out to the police boards and trying to work collaboratively on a pathway forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Painter. For my part, Lisa, I just want to say thank you so much. I know you bring a unique perspective, and I know that you work in part in the criminal justice system, and so I know you have a unique perspective to share, and we really appreciate it, that perspective, both here tonight and around the review committee table.
May I respond to what Trustee Painter said, or?
Absolutely. Go ahead. Yeah.
Trustee Painter, you're referring to SINWALK, and that was one of the groups that was allowed to speak right before your decisions were made. And I know that group well. I just wanted to reiterate that I am not somebody who has been talking about the police in terms of doing things that police are not charged to do, counselors, etc. What I am saying is our relationship with the police is a very important relationship to have that is unique to policing partners, and building that relationship is one that has direct impact on us in terms of our abilities to be able to work with them. And I just wanted to make sure that that was clear, that that's why it's so important to have a relationship with police that's uniquely different because of how of our historical and current interactions with police have been. And so I just wanted to point that out. I think a lot of times things are getting mixed up with being counselors and other things like that. I am talking about the importance of the relationship between SPLOs and also our communities and also our data. And that was the real purpose of that slide that I showed you, that in our data, what is showing is that when our youth are with SPLOs, it increases enormously that positive relationship with police compared to police who are non-SPLO officers. And that's what I meant about the trend, that's exactly what we're looking for, is that increase in trust in our relationship with police. And SPLOs are having a unique, in our city in Victoria, are having a unique positive impact with our, again, if somebody asked me, I could speak to our CG community members, but I want to make that very clear.
Yeah, thanks very much, Lisa. We really appreciate you being here. And we know that there's differing views about how and how we should interpret the data. And we have, but there are different views about how to interpret the data that we collected. And we appreciate you sharing yours tonight. Folks, was there any more questions for Lisa while we have her? And then I'm going to move us on to our next presenter. Okay, I don't see any other questions. Thank you again, Lisa. We really appreciate you taking the time. And we have your slides. Thank you so much.
I appreciate that, Nicole. And quickly, I don't work for law enforcement. I just want to make that really clear. I do some work. Most of my work is with anti-racism with educational institutions and police institutions. So it's helping to disrupt and dismantle anti-racism within those institutions. So I'm not a correctional person. I want to make that very clear.
Yeah, thanks for that clarification,
Yep.
Lisa. Appreciate it. All right, so I want to now welcome Bart Van Tine, and apologies, Bart, if I've mispronounced your surname. Please correct me if I have. Well, okay, good. Welcome, Bart. You're here to speak about honoring the Canadian flag, and again, we also had some materials that we received from you as well. I think you've probably been here through my explanation about how presentations to the board work, but again, you've got 5 minutes. The floor is yours when you're ready, and I will let you know when you have a minute left. So go ahead.
Sure. And will you be able to access my slides, or should I control it from my screen, or?
We can certainly do the same thing that we did for the previous presenter. So what we can do is have you as a co-presenter if you would like to share your screen and go through the slides, but we do have it in the backup as well.
You know what? It's actually okay. It's not much there. I'm happy to supply anything that's from there. So good evening, everyone. My name is Bart Van Tine. I'm a parent of SD61 students. I'm a teacher in SD61. And I wanted to raise a concern that's near and dear to my heart. In the presentations that I supplied, there's just multiple photos that I've noticed and I've taken of schools where they've dropped the Canadian flag entirely and have hoisted the Canadian flag. And I just wanted to, before I start on that, I just wanted to add my support to what Dr. Lisa was saying. As a teacher who's seen the fall away from what would be normal and expected behavior of youth in our schools. I've noticed a significant increase in vandalism at the school that I teach. I have just the best things to say about the SPLO program. I wish I was consulted before the decision was made, but I'm sad that it's gone, and I hope that it does come back at some point. So I do apologize. I just wanted to make sure I lent my support to Dr. Lisa before I carried on. As a Canadian citizen, as a teacher, as someone who has loved this country and everything that it stands for, I feel deeply troubled when I go to schools around the Greater Victoria School District and I see the Canadian flag dropped. I understand the push for inclusion, the push to try and make people feel welcome, but I think it sets a very dangerous precedent that we are dropping the Canadian flag to fly another flag. On the Government of Canada website, it says specifically, under rules and etiquette, there is no laws governing flag flying in Canada. It says the national flag will always be flown on its own flagpole. In the same paragraph later on, it says it is improper to fly the national flag with another flag of any type on the same flagpole. And I've made a complaint to the school board back in February when it happened for a week. I let my principal know that I was displeased with it, that I wasn't okay with that happening. To my knowledge, it hasn't happened before, or at least I haven't noticed it before. And if it has, I should be more aware. It's happened again in May, and I realized that I'm sure that is a ground-setting thing for what's happening. It's going to happen in June. And I want to just stress how important it is that the Canadian flag has its own pole. I teach many students that have family members that have fought and died in wars, that currently have service members overseas right now that are away from their families. My own brother actually is overseas fighting for Canada, and he is wearing a Canadian flag on his uniform, and he serves the flag of Canada. And he doesn't serve any other flag than the Canadian flag. I have family members that have died in many wars, and I'm sure there's many of us that could say the same thing. I'm sure there's many people in Victoria that could say the same thing. These students are family members, are friends that have fought and died, and some have survived, but many have been tragically scarred for the rest of their life from their time in service to Canada. I think it is a grave disservice to them, of disrespect to what they fought for. And I would ask that we reverse that decision to fly any other flag than the Canadian flag on our school district flagpoles. I think that if the push for inclusion is really important to the school district, they need to supply the appropriate funds to set up a separate flagpole. It can be beside it. I know from sailing terms, it always has to be lower than the Canadian flag, but I think there's another way to do it that's not offensive to our service members, to those that have lost family members. And I would really ask that we find a way to honor those people who have made that sacrifice for us.
You have a minute left.
Thank you very much. I think that's everything that I needed to say, so I'll yield the rest of my time.
Thank you very much. Okay, and again, I just provide the opportunity if you wish to take questions, you're welcome to, but again, you're not obliged to. I don't know if you want to take some questions in relation to your presentation, if there are any.
I don't mind.
Right. Right, trustees, do you have any questions or comments for Bart? Trustee Painter, go ahead.
I'm reminded that we received a letter on this same topic, and I believe the superintendent reviewed the etiquette that was if there is to be another flag flown on a flagpole, that consistent with Mr. Van Tine has said, that the Canadian flag is removed, folded properly, and stored respectfully until such time that it's not that they don't share the flagpole, and that is part of the protocol. I was trying to look it up, but wasn't able to identify that. And you know, for my own personal value, I've been very proud to serve overseas with the forces, with the maple leaf on my shoulder. And one of the things that I always thought that I was fighting for over there was the freedom for people to be themselves over here. So I'm entirely supportive of the flag, and not seeking to challenge Mr. Van Tine in any way. I do appreciate your concern and your interest in this topic, but I do recognize a variety of perspectives on this topic as well.
Thank you, Trustee Painter. Yep, thank you very much, Bart, for being here. We really appreciate it. I know that the superintendent has responded to the concern around the protocols and clarified what they are.
Can I respond to that?
Oh, sure, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Painter. Especially for your service. I didn't realize you were a service member. I have the full printout. It's kind of hard to see because it's blurring my screen, but I do have the full printout for flying the national flag, and at no point have I seen any comment about removing the flag to fly another flag. I have written a letter to the school board. I have seen no response from the superintendent. I would love to be forwarded that his response or to be directed towards it so I could see the rationale. I can't see any rationale supplied inside of the package. And again, I would reiterate that I think the Canadian flag stands for that call that people can be themselves, and I think that's the ultimate protection that we have. And I think it's a grave mistake that in this time that we want to fly a different flag of rainbows, but maybe down the road there's another group that wants to fly a different flag, and I would be as much against flying a different flag that would be completely counter to the rainbow flag as whatever might be flown in the future. I think the flagpole should be reserved just for the Canadian flag. But thank you for your feedback. I appreciate it.
Thanks very much. And you're welcome again to forward any other materials to us that you wish. And I just want to thank you again for taking the time to be here tonight. We appreciate it. And take care.
Thank you very much.
Okay, folks, I'm going to move us on in our agenda. We don't have any correspondence under B. We are at C1, Chair's Report. My Chair's Report is under C1 of the backup. I'm just going to highlight a couple of things for trustees from that report. First and foremost, just want to highlight the fact that we had our Rainbow Week celebrations between May 11th and 17th this year. It was an opportunity to really highlight that all people deserve the freedom to be themselves, their true selves, and that all people in our learning community deserve to be safe and to be treated with dignity and respect. I've also included in the board report to the board the policies and regulations on gender identity and gender expression, and links to those for your information and review. A reminder to my colleagues and to myself that June is the month where we as trustees report to one another about our activities on behalf of the board on each ad hoc committee that we're assigned to. And then also in my report this month that I wanted to draw your attention to is both the board's recent statements regarding our SPLO decision, as well as an FAQ that we put together just really to highlight some information and to clarify some of the information that and the narratives that are kind of being spread in community that aren't necessarily accurate and don't necessarily reflect the reasons for the board's decision. So I would encourage folks to go to the FAQ and have a look through that document. Certainly, we heard this evening that there are different views about how to interpret the survey results. Certainly, I think it's very, very important that we contextualize those survey results, both in terms of the number of folks that responded and being clear on how many folks that did respond actually had any experience or interactions whatsoever with SPLOs. Many of the respondents to our survey had not had any direct interactions with SPLOs. So there are different ways to interpret that data. And I think the other thing that we really want to highlight when you look at those links and you look at our FAQ is that there were a number of reasons for the board's decision. And I think it is really very, very sad and very unfortunate to hear that some folks in our learning community are experiencing other individuals or members of the public, whomever they might be, reaching out and suggesting in any way that individual members of our learning community are responsible for a board decision. The board is entitled to and has reached a unanimous decision after a 2.5-year review and after fully considering the matter. It is a divisive issue. It is a polarizing issue. There are strong views on both sides, but the board has been very, very clear from the beginning that the responsibility for the decision does not rest on anyone else's shoulders but the board's. The board was very clear from the beginning that it was going to be a board decision, that the review committee would provide recommendations, the board would consider those, but ultimately that it was a board decision. So I really want to say that, really caution folks and remind folks that we want to ensure that our learning environment is a safe one. We do not want to be encouraging or condoning comments that blame individual members of our learning community for a decision that was made by the board. And so I would just really encourage us to be mindful, keep an eye out for those kinds of comments, and please take the opportunity to correct individuals who might be under the misapprehension that it's someone else's responsibility or that someone else is to blame. The board came to a reasonable decision based on the facts and our own individual analysis. We each, as members that have the right to vote on the matter, voted according to our conscience and our own assessment of the facts before us. That is simply how board governance works. The other thing I want to just point out again, as you're looking at those links and reviewing matters, that there was a number of issues that really the board kept in mind as we reviewed and ultimately came to our decision. The program itself really defined it didn't really have defined objectives, and that was certainly very problematic. It lacked clarity around service levels. It hadn't been reviewed formally in decades. It lacked guidance regarding the protection of student rights. It lacked a complaint procedure or any other opportunity or clarity around concern reporting. There was no ongoing review or assessment mechanism. And so these are just some of the other issues that the board considered. In addition to certainly the board considered the recommendations from the Human Rights Commissioner, as well as her office's analysis of the issues and the data that is available. So I think at this point we are a year out, and I think it's really, really important that we focus on our implementation moving forward, allow the board to continue to meet with our complementary boards, which in this case is the police boards, in order to have that ongoing dialogue. We are certainly focused on moving forward that implementation. We're focused on establishing a communication protocol. And so again, would encourage folks to have a read through the FAQs, reach out if you have any questions, but also just to take the opportunity to step in and correct folks if you do hear individuals laying blame at the feet of members of our learning community, where that is certainly not appropriate or reasonable to do so. Okay, so I think that's it in terms of my report. If trustees have any questions, then I'm happy to field those. Okay, I don't see any questions from trustees, so I'm going to move us on. And so we have added a new item under this, or the new C1B to our agenda. And that is the following motion, which I'm just going to read again into the record for a second time. Let's see if I can do that a little more seamlessly this time. Okay. Okay. So the motion is as follows, that the Board of Education of School District number 61, Greater Victoria, direct the board chair to write to the Victoria Police Board to make a formal request for the following information. Any and all data pertaining to gang recruitment or other criminal activity involving youth between 2015 to date. Any and all data pertaining to police callouts to each SD61 school broken down by each school within the Victoria Police Department's jurisdiction between 2015 to date, and a copy of any and all Victoria Police policies and procedures related to vulnerable populations, including youth. And I just look to my colleagues to see if there is a seconder. Thank you, Trustee Painter. Okay, so I'm going to open the floor up for some discussion in relation to the motion. Trustee Painter, go ahead.
Just wanted to offer that I think this is a really useful one. We want to ground our decision-making process not on conjecture or anything else, but on solid evidence. And this is a clear way to collect that information. And I'm very supportive.
Thank you, Trustee Painter. Yeah, and I think from, oh yeah, Trustee Bio, you go ahead.
Yeah, I think I really agree with what Trustee Painter was saying. One of my concerns has just been kind of a lack of information and data. We found out recently about 2 arrests that happened near one of our schools in January, and I was kind of concerned that the 2 arrests, which were related to the selling of vapes, I believe, we weren't informed at the time. So it was kind of confusing to me why something that happened in January that was apparently a concern for our student safety was brought up later in March, but at the moment in January was not, communicated effectively or quickly with our principals, with the board, with our staff. And, you know, SPLO or no, I didn't have SPLOs when I was in school, so I don't see why that would need to be in place in order for those communications to happen and for that data sharing to occur. You know, was it a concern? And if so, why were we not told in January? And if it was not a concern, why are we talking about it in March? Yeah, I would really like to have more data and information about what the policies are and what the protocols are regarding, you know, how the police are intending to deal with issues regarding youth. And yeah, so.
Thank you, Trustee Barrow. Appreciate your comments. Any other comments in relation to the motion? From my perspective, I think just the more data and the more clarity, the better. I think it's time to have a better understanding of how we're moving forward. I think we're hearing comments in relation to some changes in practice in relation to policing services in Victoria and Esquimalt, where we know that since 2018 there haven't been SLOs in schools, and so when we see sort of a change in practice whereby schools, rather than being able to continue to call on their community resource officer or missed, they're being directed to the 911 or the non-emergency line instead. I think it just underscores further the need, A, for a communication protocol, and B, for some clarity around policies, procedures, and data. So that's the intention here, and just want to give my colleagues one more opportunity if they wish to speak to the motion before I call us to a vote. And I'm sorry, goodness, I've I'm sorry, I've forgotten to open the floor to our partners. That was entirely my error. I'm very sorry. I rushed ahead to our discussions and I didn't create space for our partners who may wish to comment on the motion. So if trustees, if colleagues, if you'll indulge me, I'd like to rectify my error and just backtrack a moment before I call us to a vote and open the floor and create some space for our partners around the table who may have some comments in relation to the motion. So my apologies, partners. Yes, hi, Winona, welcome. Nice to see you. The floor is yours when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. And I was going to ask if there was a change in protocol on how we were able to address motions, and I really appreciate you sort of backtracking and giving us an opportunity. I appreciate seeing this motion come forward. I feel like there's been a lot of press and information and conjecture about what is happening in schools without being able to really point to, yes, this is the definite thing that is happening. I think we all are interested in making sure our schools and our students are safe. And I think making sure that we have the data and the information is a great way of doing that. So I really appreciate the leadership of this board and the way that you're moving forward in a really thoughtful and careful manner to ensure the safety of our students and staff. And again, I really appreciate your leadership in this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your thoughts. Okay, subject to any other thoughts from any of our other partners around the table this evening, trustees, any other thoughts from yourselves before I call us to a vote? All right, I'm going to call the question. Thanks everybody for your input. All those in favor with a show of hands. And that is unanimous. Okay, thank you, trustees. Let's move on. We are now at C1C. This is the Ad Hoc Committee Annual Review. So this is a verbal item. It's really an opportunity for us as a board to reflect on our current ad hoc committees. So those include our advocacy ad hoc committee, our district facilities plan ad hoc committee, our equity ad hoc committee, our French advisory committee, our George J. naming committee, as well as our budget advisory ad hoc committee. And then I just wanted to highlight, so as part of that, we also are looking, and just wanted to not forget to highlight that we're also now looking this evening to introduce a new ad hoc committee. And so we're in the implementation stage of doing that. And that would be a climate action plan implementation ad hoc committee. The superintendent's going to be bringing us a draft terms of reference to the June ops meeting. So keep an eye out for that. At the moment, subject to anyone's thoughts around our current set of ad hoc committees, and whether or not we need to be looking at concluding any of them or adding any new committees. Trustee Kwan, did you want to comment? Go ahead when you're ready.
Yep. Just a reminder that we did have a motion after our budget in April, I believe, for a music ad hoc committee next year as well, music equity. So there's another ad hoc committee to add to the list.
Yes, thank you for the reminder. Yeah, and I believe we are looking at are we looking at draft terms of reference again to come in June? Yeah. So again, we've got a couple of new committees coming. I think we've got a couple of, one in particular that may well conclude in the next school year at some point. But I would encourage colleagues to, again, when you're thinking about putting together your update for the board meeting next month, if there is any news in relation to the ad hoc committee you're on and the conclusion of your work as a committee. I know some are ongoing and some have a specific purpose, and once that purpose has been achieved, then we dispense of the committee. There's one in particular I have in mind, so if there are any updates around timing and timelines associated with your work, that would be very helpful for us. Trustee Kwan, go ahead.
All right, second comment. I would be interested, before we made any decisions about, ceasing any ad hoc committees, also to reach out to any partners or groups that may be part of the terms of reference of those ad hoc committees to see whether we're actually through with any of the issues that we are dealing with those ad hoc committees. So just a pause there for a moment to make sure that we reach out to everyone involved to make sure that the committees are no longer necessary.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. No, great point. Thanks, Trustee Kwan. Yeah, I think there's only one in our list of ad hoc committees where at some points in the future we will be in a position to conclude the work of that committee, and that is around the George Day Naming Committee. Once that work of that committee is done, then we will officially conclude their work, but that is a work in progress, and we look forward to Trustee Painter's update to the board next month regarding the work there. Any other comments or questions in relation to the placeholder we have in our calendar to kind of review where we're at with our ad hoc committees? I think the only other thing I wanted to sort of just raise, and again, just for us to think about moving forward, is we have a budget advisory ad hoc committee. And this year we took a slightly different approach, and we used budget working groups. And so I think my suggestion would be for the board, as we move forward, if next budget cycle we decide again to use a working group model rather than one larger budget advisory committee as a model, that perhaps then we also review our ad hoc committee and decide whether we want to kind of move it in a different direction more formally. But my suggestion at this point is just to sort of see what we decide and what kind of process we want to utilize when we get there in the fall. I want to also just hold some space for staff. If you have any thoughts or comments that you want the board to be considering in relation to our ad hoc committees at this stage.
Thank you, if I may, through the chair. I think just the one thing to be mindful of, as I know the board is the fewer staff members at the board office, and we've added 3 ad hoc committee meetings or ad hoc committees. So that's a lot for the 4 of us to take on.
Thanks for that reminder, Superintendent. Yeah, appreciate that. Yeah, and so perhaps when we're looking at our terms of reference for our ad hoc committees, we can, reflect on how many members of the administration or senior leadership team are needed to progress the work. And keep that in mind. Make things manageable. Okay, subject to any further thoughts around the table in relation to the committees, and our current list of committees, some of the pending implementation of a couple of additional committees, I will move us on. And just the last item that I just wanted to raise was just to flag a few things from our June work plan. So next month, we will be acknowledging National Indigenous Peoples Day on June 21st. So just again, want to highlight that and look forward to the opportunity to do so. The other thing to keep an eye out next month is our Enhancing Student Learning Report and our English Language Learners and review of the 2023-2024 summary. As well, the board and staff will be attending graduation ceremonies. And then again, we've already spoken to the reports trustees will also be bringing in relation to our ad hoc committee work. Any questions or thoughts or comments in relation to the work plan or anything else under chair's report tonight, folks? Okay, I am then going to move us forward in our agenda. So without further ado, we do have a number of recommended motions. We don't have any trustee reports, but we do under board committee reports have one recommended motion from Education Policy and Directions, as well as the draft minutes, which are there for information. The recommended motion from the 13th of May meeting is that the Board of Education of School District number 61 Greater Victoria refer the draft regulation 6163.1 learning resources to the superintendent for review and bring back a revised draft to the June 3rd, 2024 Education Policy and Directions Committee meeting. May I have a mover? Thank you, Trustee Mabobi, and a seconder. Thank you, Trustee David. Okay, I want to open the floor up again for discussion first and foremost from our partners. If you have any comments or thoughts in relation to the motion on the floor before I turn things over to trustees. Okay, trustees, any discussion before I call the question? All right, all those in favor of the motion with the show of hands, please. And that is unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, so under D2, the Operations Policy and Planning Committee, we have again at A, the draft minutes of the May 13th meeting. And I think, yeah, again, this is just for information. And then we have a number of recommended motions. So I'm going to move through the motions one at a time, unless I get direction from the board to move them as a group. Okay, so I'm going to move them one at a time. The first recommended motion is that the Board of Education of School District number 61 Greater Victoria approve the 2023-2024 audit planning report as presented to the audit subcommittee. May I have a mover? Thank you, Trustee Kwan, seconded by Trustee Bayo. And again, just opening the floor to our partners if you have any comments or thoughts that you want to share or present in relation to the motion. Okay, trustees, any discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor of the motion with a show of hands. And that is unanimous. Thank you, trustees. All right, the second recommended motion coming from Operations Policy and Planning this month was that the Board of Education of School District number 61 Greater Victoria accept the March 2024 quarterly financial report as presented to the audit subcommittee. May I have a mover? Thank you, Trustee Mabobi, and seconded by Trustee Kwan. And again, just opening the floor up to our partners. If you do have any thoughts or comments in relation to the motion, feel free. Okay, hearing none. Trustees, any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion then with a show of hands. And that is unanimous. Thanks again. Okay, and so the next recommended motion is in relation to solar panels, and it is that the Board of Education of School District number 61 Greater Victoria direct the superintendent to work with the district's manager of energy to provide the Board of Education with a report detailing the cost, benefit, and feasibility of investing in solar panels at SD61 schools. May I have a mover? Thank you, Trustee Mabobi, seconded by Trustee David. And again, just want to open the floor up to our partners if you have any comments or thoughts that you want to share in relation to this motion. Okay. Trustees, I just want to highlight with this one that we did originally have a number of schools named, and what we did at the standing committee level was make an amendment so that it opens it up to a review of any of our schools. And so it just really widens the scope, and it allows the superintendent, in consultation with our energy manager, to look at the feasibility at a number of our schools. And so good news in terms of increased scope. But there were a number of schools that expressed particular interest, and the superintendent and the energy manager are aware. And those were Vic High and Mount Doug and Central. Any discussion or any further thoughts in relation to the motion before I call the question? All right, so all those in favor with a show of hands. And that is unanimous. Thank you again, trustees. Okay, so we are now at the point of our agenda at E. We start at E1. These are our district leadership team reports. Superintendent, is there anything from your monthly report that you would like to highlight for the board?
Thank you, Chair. If I may, a few, just the gratitude section. We had a fantastic May 17th professional development, so I'd like to provide gratitude and acknowledgement to Dr. Nimi and the Indigenous Education Department. Also, we have an exciting elementary track meet coming up on Thursday. Many elementary school teachers, as well as principals, vice principals, as well as district staff, led by Mr. Galhan on this track meet. So many thanks for that, many hours of work. And also to Vic High students and staff who had a very successful open house yesterday. Many community members walking through that building and noticing and acknowledging with gratitude the fantastic work that facilities did, as well as Indigenous Education Department on that building. So again, just surfacing the gratitude.
Thank you very much, Superintendent. I'm going to ask trustees for a mover again, just to receive the superintendent's report as presented, and then I'll open the floor for questions. Thank you, Trustee Bayo, seconded by Trustee David. Any questions, trustees, in relation to the superintendent's report? Okay. Hearing none, all those in favor of receiving the superintendent's report with a show of hands. And that is unanimous. Thank you, trustees. Okay, the next item under E1B is the personal digital device restriction in schools. Superintendent, thank you very much for bringing an initial draft and a report on sort of how things are progressing. I will turn things over to you to present this item.
Thank you, Chair. So as you can see in the memo, there was a change to the Provincial Standards Code of Conduct. Following section that you see in the memo was added to that with regards to restricting the use of personal digital devices at schools, and 6 areas to address in the Code of Conduct. So you'll see in the memo that there is a draft student code of conduct statements regarding the use of the digital devices. And we've created those draft statements for elementary, middle, and secondary, common language for each of those 3 levels. We really tried to focus in on age-appropriate pieces to this. There are different expectations for elementary, middle, and secondary, with rising expectations as the students move through the grades. There's a little more allowed use in secondary than there is in middle and elementary. Ultimately, though, we are talking about having restricted use. We're talking about ensuring that we're promoting online safety and digital literacy, as well as acknowledging that some students with disabilities, diverse abilities, and medical needs may need the use of their cell phone or other personal digital device. I think also to note is that in each of these sections is teacher discretion as to whether students can use this device and when they can use it for appropriate learning. So it is there for information. We have met with principals and vice principals and shared this draft language. We received feedback from them and made some adjustments based on the feedback. We've also shared this with the GVTA executive and welcome feedback from them as well over the next couple of weeks. What we do have to do is to submit the finalized statements to the Ministry of Education by July of this year. So we are looking to receive feedback. We know that within the provincial standards codes for codes of conduct, that these must be reviewed annually and they must be reviewed at the school level. So what we would anticipate is that principals in collaboration with their staff are looking at not only this code of conduct around cell phones and digital devices, but also all of the student codes of conduct, and that they are reviewed with the staff, with parents and students. So that is an annual review that's mandatory based on the whole provincial standard for the code of conduct.
Thank you very much, Superintendent. I think what I'll do at this point, I know this is for information at this point, and that this will come back in June, a revised version in light of the feedback that you receive between now and then. I'm wondering, trustees, if you have, or indeed the partners around our table, if there are any comments or points of feedback that you wish to provide this evening. Trustee Kwan, go ahead.
Yeah, I just I was curious around receiving feedback on the codes of conduct and how that's going to go out, if it has already or if not, and who it's going out to and how it will be received.
Superintendent?
Yeah, thank you, Trustee Kwan. So what we would anticipate, which is similar for the provincial standards for codes of conduct, is that these would be taken to PAC meetings for parent feedback at level. So it really is pertinent to each of the levels. And given it is standard language for elementary, we would anticipate all elementary schools, as they meet with their staff, would get feedback from staff. As they discuss with students, they'd get feedback. And as they discuss with PACs, they'd get feedback. We will be bringing this to the administration meeting in June, so we can also find out from them. I know some staff meetings have already occurred, so they may have shared with staff prior to this meeting, but we will continue to receive feedback as they meet with staff and with parents.
Okay, and it's going to come back before the board in June. I wanted to flag one thing, Superintendent, and that was around the language under the definition of personal digital device. And so the definition, of course, is in the ministerial order. However, we've added a line that reads, for the purpose of this document, personal digital devices also include earbuds and headphones. So that is not in the ministerial order, and it doesn't align with the definition in the ministerial order. And so I'm just wondering what the thinking was in terms of including that there. It's not a personal digital device, at least not according to the ministerial order. Yeah, so if you could provide some context or rationale, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, thank you, through the chair. So what we were thinking of is when utilizing these devices, typically a person may use earbuds or headphones, and so we weren't defining it for we were using the ministry definition as well as our own. So it wasn't meant to just be the ministry definition, but again, coming back to when students are requesting to use earbuds or headphones, that they would seek the teacher approval for that purpose.
Okay. Yeah, I think there's a couple of things just around that particular line, and then the line that at the end of the standard wording, and which talks about The use of personal digital devices may support students with disabilities, diverse abilities, or medical needs as outlined in the student's support plan and individual education plan. What about students who don't have a support plan or an IEP? How are we sort of giving guidance to staff about how they should be making decisions about whether to have a student or allow a student to use a personal digital device?
I would expect and hope that individual conversations can occur with the teacher and the student. There will be other situations where students don't have IEPs or support plans where they will be reaching out and asking if they can access their phone or their digital device. So as happens now, we have conversations with students when they ask. And I think we really need to be mindful of culturally responsive pedagogy as well as interaction with students. So I would hope that that would be, as it is currently, a conversation between a teaching staff member, principal, vice principal, and a student.
Thank you very much. The only that last comment I have at this point anyways, in reading it, is just wanting to kind of clarify how we communicate at the school-based level, how folks resolve concerns, right? So when there is a context-based concern where you're having to apply a code of conduct to a particular circumstance, and there's a concern with the approach and a need for further dialogue or resolution of concerns, what would normally be our direction to folks in terms of how they would resolve those concerns if they have them?
So I think on if we look at this through the lens of the whole student code of conduct, we'd be expecting, first of all, an annual review. So if there were general concerns or specific concerns with what was written or not clarity, then that can happen annually, as well as an ongoing conversation if there's either lack of clarity or concern with a student, a staff member, or a parent around what is written in the student code of conduct. We would be expecting not only an informal conversation, but potentially through a complaint process. So I think that there are many ways, hopefully, for individuals to reach out if they have a question with regards to what is written in this. And this is a subsection of the student code of conduct. So how concerns or complaints are followed up with the general statements included in student codes of conduct would be the same for this. So I think there are mechanisms within schools and within the district to seek clarity or address concerns that may come forward.
Thank you very much. Okay. Just turning to my colleagues or indeed partners around the table if they have any other feedback to provide the superintendent at this stage. Again, being mindful that it's going to come back to us in June for consideration. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Superintendent. Appreciate you bringing it to us a little bit early so we could have a chance to have a look at where things are. I'm going to move us on now to E1C. So this is our 2024-2025 Board of Education and Standing Committee meeting dates. There is a recommended motion that the Board of Education of School District number 61, Greater Victoria, approve the 2024-2025 Board of Education Standing Committee meeting dates. So again, just a reminder to folks, these dates went out on our website for a period of 1 month in line with the requirements of the School Act. It was a period of consultation, and I just want to turn things over to Associate Superintendent Arts if you have anything that you wanted to highlight in relation to this.
Thank you. If I may, through the chair, I think this is for the Board of Education and Standing Committee meeting
Oh,
dates.
pardon me. I'm getting ahead of ourselves or myself. We're not quite there yet. I was thinking to myself, that was really quick. That month went by very quick. Thank you for bringing me back to our ad hoc committee dates and our standing committee dates. So this is to approve our standing committee dates. Yeah, pardon me. There's no consultation period required on this one, thankfully. So trustees, we get to make a unilateral decision here. No School Act requirement. Any questions, trustees, or indeed our partners in relation to the proposed standing committee meeting dates for the next school year? Okay, I don't see any. So trustees, I will look for a mover and a seconder. Thank you, trustee Kwan, and seconded by trustee Mabobi. Any discussion before I call the question to approve the standing committee meeting dates for 2024, 2025? Okay, all those in favor with a show of hands. And that is unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, so we're now moving on to E1D, and this is our elementary strings hub model. Associate Superintendent Arts, I will indeed turn it over to you for this particular one. Go ahead when you're ready.
Yeah, thank you very much to the chair. There is a memo in the pack up for you. I'll just highlight a few things out of that. So in response to the motion from the April board meeting, this is the model that's been brought forward. Just want to highlight the hub model was based on the following sort of criteria. Wanted to proximity of distance between schools. It was really important that we didn't want students to be traveling farther than possible. Also utilize the projected class size based on the number of students who are enrolled in strings this current year as a place to get an idea for the size of the hub for next year. This model will allow for all grade 5 students, regardless of the elementary school they're at, to choose to be a part of this. All schools are attached that have grade 5 students. They will be, the strings positions will be district positions that will be staffed through our district principal and HR. Each hub will offer 2 45-minute classes a week. The hubs will consist of anywhere from 1 school, 2 schools, or in some cases 3 schools in a hub. And single hub schools will occur before school. Multi-school hubs, the classes will occur after school. This way to maximize or limit the number of potential employees needed to fill the positions and increase FTE in the postings that will go out. And the classes will occur equally in the schools within the hub. So for a 2-hub school, for example, the class will take place for half the year at school 1 and half the year at school 2. So students will have the equal amount of travel and have the equal amount of time within their own school that the strings will be offered. The exception to this would be the few schools that have 3 hubs or 3 schools, hubs that have 3 schools. In that case, it is the geographical center school or the least travel distance that would host the classes to reduce the amount of travel time. The hubs are laid out there for you. And following this, the next steps would be for the district principal of HR to put postings together for the summer round. So these could be filled for September when school starts. So that's just a highlight of what's in there. Happy to have a discussion if people have questions.
Thank you very much, Associate Superintendent Arts. Okay, I'm going to open the floor up to discussion or questions that folks might have in relation to the memo. And again, invite our partners if you have any questions or thoughts, and please feel free. So yeah, where would we like to begin? Trustee Kwan, go ahead. Oh, and then, sorry, Trustee Kwan, do you mind if I just...
No worries.
Thanks. I'm going to open the floor first to our partner. So I want to know whenever you're ready, and then I'll move to trustees.
Sure, and I'm happy to do it anyway too, because I don't think we're on a motion. I guess, and I don't know how, Chair, you want to set this up, but my first question was, Associate Superintendent Arts there explained, like the schools that have 3 hubs will go to the one that, is it the school that's highlighted? Will be the school where it's located. So in the case of Craigflower, even though they didn't offer strings, which I think was a deliberate decision on the part of the school, that's the intent is to have the strings program at Craigflower and bring you View, Royal, and Tillicum there.
Right. The highlighted school for the hubs of 3 schools would be the school that would host. That's correct.
Okay, and then Chair, can I ask a second question? And then
Go ahead.
Some of these groups of students are fairly large, like 64, I think, is the highest at SJD. And so when you're contemplating staffing for that, does that mean that you'll have 2 teachers to manage 64 grade 5 students learning a strings instrument for the first time?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So SJD, that's this year's current numbers of students who participate in strings at SJD with the staffing that they have, which would be the same as next year. And that was the threshold that I used for putting the hubs together because that one, and same with Margaret Jenkins, Willows, Oaklands, those are all this year's numbers just rolled over to next year. And that's why they stayed as single school hubs, because combining another school would become too large.
So one teacher?
Currently, there's one teacher at those schools, correct? And that would be the anticipation next year that would continue the same as it currently is.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm gonna turn the floor over to Trustee Kwan and then Trustee Mabobi.
Thank you. I'll go one at a time. I have several questions, but I think continuing on, that was one of the questions that was first and foremost in my mind too. Thank you, Winona, for highlighting that. So with regards to SJD, we know that there's one teacher currently with 64 students. So for some of those schools, for example, where we didn't have strings before, but we are anticipating perhaps estimated total of 56 for that Craig Flower Hub. Again, would we be looking at one teacher for 56 students, or are we looking to hire 2 students with regards to that number? And I guess my other question would be with regards to staffing and the School Act and class sizes, how would that fit in as well?
Thank you, Trustee Kwan. The hub model presented is taking one teacher into account for each of the hubs, and it is spending the budget that was approved through the budget process. So if we wanted to look at multiple teachers in certain hubs, we could adjust that in different areas, or we'd have to look at a budget change because this currently spends that budget amount with one teacher for each hub. With regards to class size, music classes are exempt from that class size, and so that's why these size classes have been existing this year as well, as you see with some large groups.
Thank you. Trustee Kwan, did you have another question that you wanted to ask before I move to Trustee Mabobi, or should I come back to you?
I'll ask a follow-up with this one and then you can come back to me. I was just curious whether we've looked into any other options. I mean, really with a 45-minute class and that many students, I'd be interested to see what kind of feedback the teacher has at SJD this year. But I think really in 45 minutes, you're going to get through tuning instruments. And, I would just compare this with, to 65 students, teaching 65 students to read with one teacher. So these are beginner strings. It's going to be a bit difficult. But having said that, I know there are other options. Perhaps there are music students who would be willing to help out, or senior music students from our high schools who would be willing to help out. So, I'd be interested to see if we could arrange, something that would be, a better option for some of these large classes, so that one teacher is not having to handle 65 students.
Yeah, thank you. And I just, we can be definitely flexible with this. This is just put out to you here for the first time. I think in high schools, there are music TAs that help in lots of classes and get course credit for doing that. There's things that we could explore. Middle schools, lots of areas that we could look to support some of the larger hubs. I think this is a great idea.
Thank you very much. Great, thanks for your patience. Trustee Mabobi, the floor is yours when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. I guess what I have to say is not so much a question at this point. It's more just I want to point out that in a strings class, especially, for that class to be effective, instruments do actually have to be in tune, or it's like already first day of strings class is total chaos. But I cannot imagine a strings class where instruments have not been tuned by a teacher or someone who has experience tuning string instruments. And I cannot imagine tuning 64 instruments in 45 minutes. That's not possible. That's not a thing that can physically happen. So I really want to express how crazy that sounds. And even if we had like 2 or 3 students helping out, like even 4 people tuning 64 instruments in 45 minutes is kind of insane. I really want to make sure that that's clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Mabobi. Okay, I'm going to go back to Trustee Kwan. Go ahead when you're ready.
Thanks. Yeah, I was actually, the second question I was curious about was space. I know that, with some of these, we're not going to fit, 56 kids in a classroom or a music room. And so have we thought about space? Gym availability isn't always an option, especially with if these hubs are happening before or after school, because we have before and after school quite often using those spaces. And so are we sure that these schools have the space to host these classes twice a week for 45 minutes?
Yeah, thank you. Great question. Yes, I was able to speak to a number of the schools around space, in particular the schools or hubs with 3 schools and the space they would have. And in the other cases, all of these other schools have hosted strings, obviously, this year in their buildings, with a few exceptions that weren't offered. So that is something we'll have to approach. I do believe we will be able to accommodate that, but until we see the actual numbers of students who are coming next year, it's difficult to know exactly what space is required.
Thank you very much. Yeah, you continue, Trustee Kwan. Go ahead.
Thanks. So just to follow up on that, then, what would the game plan be then, as far as once we know, what students have and how to, basically curate that space, especially if we find that, let's say we have 50 students at one school that want to take strings and we don't have space for them, what would be our approach then?
To the chair, that's where we will have to be flexible and look at what, maybe pairing 2 schools together isn't going to work because it becomes too large, and we have to look at maybe altering that with another school, or maybe we have to have 2 single hubs, they become 2 single hubs, or we'll have to really look at that when we finally get our numbers. Like I say, I based it on this year, where how many students were participating this year in strings in their own school, and that sort of as a guideline for where we go.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, and then I'll turn to Trustee Painter.
I'm happy to cede the floor to Trustee Painter. I know I've had my fair share.
Sounds good. Thanks, Trustee Kwan. Trustee Painter, go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. And I do appreciate that it's really easy sitting in the cheap seats to lob all sorts of complicated questions, and so, but it does, this model does bring up some questions for me. And one of the ones was whether or not we've applied, say, an equity lens to the distribution. And I recognize that it's a struggle trying to develop a hub model, but I'm also thinking about, for example, the number of students who were involved this year, but were also at out of school care at the schools, and whether or not they would actually have the flexibility to move out of school after school hours or before school hours. I'm also wondering about some of our priority schools and whether we can have similar expectations about their ability to commute between schools, recognizing that these may well be families with limited transportation means and other limitations. So I have no simple solutions. I apologize for that off the bat. I'm not suggesting that you might either, but I was just wondering if some of those things have been put on the table.
Thank you very much. Trustee Painter, Associate Superintendent Arts, do you have any thoughts on those comments?
Yeah, thank you, Trustee Painter. You're highlighting the exact thoughts that we went through around this, and I think one of the things that we really wanted to address was the proximity of schools to reduce the transportation needs, and hopefully, in some cases, close enough for students to be able to get back and forth to. We also wanted, as I say, to have it where it happens in one school for half the year, and then in the other school for half the year, so it's equitable in that way as it's being distributed across the district. So we tried to approach that as many ways as we could. But as you say, there's no easy answer for any of it. So I appreciate you raising that though.
Thank you very much, Associate Superintendent. Hi, Sarah. Thanks. Sorry, I didn't notice your hand before. Go ahead when you're ready.
I was just going to share that all of our childcare spaces always have to have a backup space in our buildings. So like, for example, George J, gym is our primary, library is our backup. So in the event we have to pivot, not ideal to have childcare in our library on a long-term basis, but every childcare has to have a backup space in the building should they have to pivot by licensing.
Thank you very much for reminding us of those operational realities that we must be mindful of. Yeah, thanks so much. Trustee Kwan, go ahead.
Yeah, and I think just you know, carrying on from Trustee Painter's comment, my last but definitely not least, I guess, concern would be student safety and getting to and from the hubs if there's more than one school. You know, I look at some of these and I know, you know, proximity was taken into account, which is, you know, I'm very grateful for that, the planning that's gone into that. But I do, you know, kind of look at some of these, you know, for example, Rogers and Lake Hill, we've got Mackenzie Avenue in between those two, which is concerning. Quadra and Cloverdale would have Finlayson, you know, Macaulay, Vic West, Craig Flower, you know, there's a Esquimalt Road there. So I guess my question is, as far as student safety, we thought about, you know, any other alternatives for students getting there. And again, I think it speaks to equity here. What Trustee Painter was bringing up is that, you know, the students whose parents are available before and after school and available to drive are probably the ones taking advantage of the program, and the ones who maybe don't have access to a vehicle or parents who are available to bring them to the school would be able to access. So I'm curious if we've thought about that. And further to that, I know to add another thing to my list here is just whether, you know, we've looked in at all on other options that we could provide, like perhaps what would be the costing of you know, busing kids in a small bus or whatever to the other school for that time. And if we haven't, is it possible for us to perhaps get costing for that and see what's available that way, or whether there's, you know, walking school buses that we could partner with PACS and that kind of thing to make sure that those happen. So just curious around that one.
Thank you very much, Associate Superintendent Arts. Go ahead when you're ready.
Yeah, thank you through the chair, Trustee Kwan. I do not have the specific costing. We could look at that, but we believe that the small school busing, we don't have a lot of buses in our district. We're not a busing district. And so we believe that would be cost prohibitive. And so we didn't go any farther with that after that initial conversation. Walking school buses are something we've talked about, organizing carpooling, coordinating, those sort of things that individual hubs could look at if they become a need. So we do have some ideas around that for sure. But I could bring back costing on busing if people really wanted it, but our belief is that it would be cost prohibitive.
Okay. Yeah, did you have, yeah, go ahead, Trustee Kwan.
I really appreciate that. I understand there's already thought that's gone into this, so that's really helpful. That's one of the things I thought of too is the carpooling. I mean, I know we arrange it a lot of times for field trips and that kind of thing during school hours. So I wonder if that's something, I guess my follow-up question with that would be whether we'd leave that up to the schools to do, or whether as a district we'd take some of that work on to see if we could facilitate or support schools in that way for getting students safely to strengths classes.
Thank you. I think that's more than we would be able to take on. I don't believe we have the resources to do that.
Yeah, go ahead, Sarah, when you're ready.
I think I would echo that as much as we want the best for our students, I'm not sure a full year commitment of being the coordinator for how we're going to get kids into carpool to get from one site to another is going to be something with all the competing demands on us that we're going to want to leap at. I think it would be left to families to build those relationships and figure out transportation.
Okay. So perhaps we can look at some partnerships with PACS and look at some other creative solutions to address some of those transport needs. Trustee Kwan, you had a follow-up?
I actually just have one last thing actually. And that was just regarding, you know, we've seen some of the, you know, a lot of thought that's gone into it. Also, perhaps some of the things that the strains that we'll see with students and how this program will work. And so my thought was just with next steps, feedback and how we would kind of evaluate how the program is working for students, parents, staff, administrators in our district. And so my thought was actually, to suggest the next steps with a feedback survey that would happen perhaps closer to just before our budget season, so that we would have that information going back into the next budget that we do. And I'm happy to put a motion on the floor if trustees are interested in putting that into effect.
Thank you, Trustee Kwan. I saw Superintendent Witten's hand up, so I just want to circle back to Superintendent Witten, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you very much. So with the Music Equity Ad Hoc Committee, there is a piece to that in the deliverables to examine that through an equity lens and also to feed that back prior to February, I think it is, in the draft TOR that's coming. So that would be in time for the budget. So I think that's built into that committee.
Great. Thanks for that clarification.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, so we'll look at that when we get the draft terms of reference. One final circle around the table, the virtual table, just to check in with everyone to see if you have any other feedback or thoughts that you want to share at this stage before I move us on to we got trustee questions next. Okay, thank you, everybody. Oh yeah, Trustee Kwan, go ahead.
Sorry, we're at trustee questions, or we're moving on to trustee questions next?
We are at trustee questions next. So, and I didn't see any hands, so I think we're good to start with trustee questions if you want to kick us off.
Okay, and didn't unmute the first time. Sorry about that. Yeah, and I think just with my question was really actually on still keeping on the music track from Annie Shum's presentation earlier. I just wondered, we haven't actually seen a huge boost in enrollment enough to actually, be one of those growing school districts where we get extra funding because of that or due to that. So I was just curious with regards to context on perhaps why we're seeing classrooms being lost in elementary schools and music rooms being lost in elementary schools when we're not really seeing, a huge jump in enrollment.
Thank you, Trustee Kwan. Superintendent.
Thank you very much. And through the chair, I'll pass it to Acting Associate Superintendent Powell.
Yeah, through you, the chair, just with registration, and Trustee Kwan, we spoke about this in our last meeting, I believe, as well, but to revisit it, we do have a number of our schools, particularly at the elementary level right now, that are at capacity. So we don't have space. And so just to give you an example, at Vic West, for example, our kindy class is over 65 students. And so that's at a place where we start to have cohorts where you can see if you take that over 6 years, you no longer have space. And so you don't have to you're not just looking at capacity or enrollment over 1 year, you're actually looking at over the time of the school so that you can fit all those students coming in. And with every child that enrolls, that there's also a possibility of siblings that come behind them as well. And so when we're talking about our music classrooms and having to look at alternative places or the medium in which they're offered, it is all to do with our capacities and over enrollment in our elementary schools that we're speaking of.
Thank you, Acting Associate Superintendent. It's getting late in the evening. I'm a little tongue-tied over some of these job titles. I should know by now, but thank you very much for those comments. Any other trustee questions, colleagues? I just had one, and this is just for the superintendent. So I just wanted to clarify a couple of things. So it was my understanding that the chart that was highlighted in the presentation that we received from Lisa Gunderson was compiled following the board's decision last year in May, and was updated over the summer and into September 2023 with input from the principals and vice principals. The chart speaks to sort of the status at the beginning of the school year. And so I wonder if you could explain sort of what work leadership has done to ensure that proper supports are in place since then.
Well, through the chair, when we meet with principals and vice principals every month, we talk about what is occurring within the schools and where they're seeing potentially some stretches to staffing. I think that we're constantly working with community members to find out from our partners who can help us. I think that the needs within schools are evolving, and we've discussed the complexities that have come forward, both within society in general, but also with the stretches to any supports we have available. So for us, it's constant conversations about what they're noticing. And I think the supports that are available are different, or supports that are needed are different between elementary, middle, and secondary. So I think it's leaning into the professionals in the schools to ensure that we're aware of what the needs are, and then looking to either district team members, school-based team, district leadership to try and find those needs and support the students in the school. So I think it's a myriad of opportunities and different structures.
Thank you, Superintendent Whitten. Okay, folks, any other questions before I move us on to the Secretary Treasurer's report? Okay, thank you very much, everyone, for your questions and the answers. Secretary Treasurer, whenever you're ready, if there's anything from your monthly report you wish to highlight, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, included in the memo are just some of the activities since the last board meeting at the end of April. I don't have anything in particular to highlight, other than the fact that the Pro-D activity at the end was part of the May 17th Pro-D Day, which was fantastic, and appreciate being able to participate in that. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much. All right, trustees, we have a recommended motion that the Board of Education of School District number 61, Greater Victoria, receive the Secretary Treasurer's report as presented. May I have a mover and a seconder? Thank you, Trustee Mabobi, seconded by Trustee Kwan. Any discussion? Or indeed any questions for the Secretary Treasurer in relation to her report this month? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of receiving the Secretary Treasurer's monthly reports, that is unanimous. Thank you, trustees. Okay, so we are now at F question period. I'm just going to turn to Associate Superintendent Arts to see what we've got, if anything, for question period.
Yeah, thank you. We have 7 questions tonight. I have sent them your way earlier, so you should have them, I hope.
Yeah, okay, let me just have a look here. Thank you very much. Okay. Do indeed. Okay. So the first question. Can you clarify number 9 on the SPLO FAQ on the SD61 website? There are incomplete sentences and details need to be clear to the public. Can police volunteer to assist in crossing guard duties, drop off food donations, deliver education pieces to students, pop in to say hi, etc. We would definitely have a look at whatever is happening with the FAQ and seek to make sure that that is clear on the website. We did, through the FAQ, make it clear that police, like any other member of our community, are welcome to volunteer. They would just go through the volunteer process like any of our other volunteers. But we will have a look at the website and make sure that that is resolved. Okay. Okay, so question number 2. It says, after all the pleas and letters from parents and members of the community, why do you still refuse to consider a way to improve the program instead of removing it entirely? So I think we want to sort of contextualize this. We did a review over a 2.5-year period. We made a decision last year, and we have since done our very best to clarify the basis of the decision. But we want to make it clear that all of our safety protocols remain in effect, and the board continues to meet with our policing partners to look at, well, our priority is to establish a communication protocol, but the relationship with policing services, regardless of it changing, is still an important relationship, and police will continue to be utilized in appropriate ways where there's a policing matter that arises. And I think the only other thing I would add in terms of this question is, I think there's certain assumptions about the nature of the feedback or the volume of feedback that the board has received. And so I appreciate that there are differing perspectives, but there are indeed differing perspectives. And yeah, and I think we just have to respect that. Okay, number 3 this evening. Can a safe space / outpost be allocated specific days and times for an officer to be available for students and parents to address their issues? It's certainly something that we can consider. I think, you know, again, we would highlight that if a student or indeed a parent wants to interact with the police around a certain matter, there is nothing preventing them from reaching out. We do have police who interact with students and parents at their request. So there's nothing that would prevent that, and that does indeed happen when a student or a parent needs that support from police. Number 4 this evening. Can teacher, administrators, and trustees in SD 61 seek counseling if they feel unsafe with police presence? Psychologists and counselors would never advise anyone to stay away from police officers because they feel uncomfortable or unsafe in their presence. Well, I think what I would say is that we're trying to create a safe space and have services that should be delivered by appropriately trained, certified, and regulated professionals being provided by those appropriately trained, regulated, and certified professionals. That doesn't preclude, and certainly has not in the last year precluded us from reaching out to police to ask for support when it is indeed a policing matter. What the board's decision does mean is that we would not be using police to be involved in behavioral management or discipline of students. We would not want to see police be involved as some kind of quasi sort of counseling function. And so, you know, I think really we want to be very clear that if the matter comes up and it's a policing matter, we would continue to liaise and to reach out to our policing partners, and we have continued to do that over the last year. The other thing is, I think it's very important to highlight that nobody is suggesting, and nor has the board ever suggested, that anyone in the community should be afraid of police. What we do want to ensure, though, is that policing services are provided when indeed it's a policing matter, when it's an educational matter, when it's a matter that requires the support from a trained, regulated, and certified professional, that we would lean into those types of supports rather than using police to help us address gaps or pressures that we might have. Superintendent Whitten, I've been remiss that I should have checked in with you to see if you had anything else you wanted to add as I answer these questions. I also want to save some space for Superintendent Whitten if there was anything else around this.
Thank you through the chair. Nothing to add yet so far.
Okay, please stop me if there is, and I'm sorry I didn't check in with you earlier. Question 5. So just bear with me. Will this board edit or remove item 11 from the SPLO FAQ on the website? It is not factual and is misleading the public. In the absence of historical data from police, it is not possible to determine whether reports of gang recruitment or criminal activities represent a change in activity. Well, I think we'll just have to agree to disagree in terms of historical data, and but certainly tonight, for those that are watching our board meeting, our board has made a formal request for data, and so hopefully we'll get a better sense of the nature of some of the concerns, and have a bit more of a historical perspective on what, if any, changes have occurred. Okay, so bear with me, folks. We'll go to number 6. Oh, sorry, Superintendent Whitten, was there anything else that you wanted to add? No, okay. Okay, so number 6. Okay, so why is it that now when families are trying to engage with you directly to explain their lived experience of the past year, you refuse to engage with them? Again, I think that that's sort of an assumption. I don't see us refusing to engage with folks. I think that there are appropriate channels to engage. And I think what we've tried to do is refer folks to the professionals that can assist and support them. We've also, myself and the vice chair have also connected directly with individuals who've expressed an interest and a concern. We've done an FAQ to try to shed some more light on the nature of the board's decision. We've issued numerous statements, and so hopefully that will help folks, but we would really encourage anyone who's having issues or is unclear how to access supports and resources to reach out to their school principals, to reach out to counseling support within schools. And if you're having trouble, again, there are appropriate processes to be utilizing to raise those concerns up to our senior leadership team and to the superintendent. Superintendent, was there anything else in terms of supports for anyone that is going through a difficult time and having, experiencing things that require support from our school district and our staff?
No, thank you, Chair. I think people are knowledgeable and aware of the channels to reach out for support at the school level and as well as the district staff level.
Sounds good. Okay, and again, the only other thing I would add is, if a situation arises where there is a safety concern that requires police to be called to support, then that is what we will do and we will continue to do. And I think it is really up to policing services to decide what kind of officer they send, what kind of training that officer has when they send officers out to schools to support vulnerable populations, including youth. Okay, I think I'm looking and I'm just going to check in with the associate superintendent. I think number 7 was the last question under question period. Is that right? Have I missed anything?
No, that's correct. 7 questions and there's been nothing since. So this is the last one.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. And again, thanks to everyone who took the time to write in with their questions this evening. We appreciate it. Okay, so we are now at G, which is public disclosure of in-camera items. We have a number G1 through G4, which is there for information. We have no new business nor notice of motions that I'm aware of, but I'll just check in with my colleagues to make sure. Okay, and so that brings us to adjournment. And so I'll look again to trustees for a motion to adjourn. Thank you. That's moved by trustee Mabobi and a seconder. Moved by trustee Kwan, or seconded rather by trustee Kwan. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor with a show of hands. And that is unanimous. Thank you, everybody, for your time tonight. Take care. Be safe. Have a nice evening.